Hello my friends, today we will take a look at the DJI Osmo Pocket. I know that this is probably not the first or second Osmo Pocket review that you are watching, so in this video I would like to take a step back and revisit the whole concept of this type of device and also how it was implemented. I would also like to explain what I think that this device is suitable for, what it can do, what it cannot do, what it should be able to do after firmware update, and how I personally intend to use it for social media content production and also for professional production. So first of all, I have to say that I really like the concept of this device. It is basically 1/2.3-inch sensor mounted on a tiny gimbal paired with reasonably powerful processing. As the name suggests, it is indeed possible to carry it in your pocket, although probably not in the pocket of your jeans. The reason why I like this concept is that the stabilization is often the main thing that sets apart amateur looking footage for classy or even professionally looking footage. DJI kind of brings stabilization to the masses by providing a device which indeed stabilizes the footage without the need to carry something that is relatively large and difficult to set up and operate, like smartphone or camera gimbal. The price of Osmo Pocket is about $350 at the time of making of this video. You can check the link in the description for current pricing, and it is in my opinion quite reasonable price. It is still cheaper than GoPro Hero 7. So overall, I think that this concept makes sense. So what about the implementation? Osmo Pocket is small. Even though I wasn't quite shocked by its size, it is small enough to outrule the size as decisive factor determining whether I will take it with me or not. Included case is also well thought out and it protects the device without introducing unnecessary weight or bulk. The build quality is pretty solid, the body is made of plastics, but the gimbal is metal and it actually feels kind of dense and it has some heft to it. It also holds pretty well in both landscape and portrait mode. That is without being connected to the smartphone, we will get to that later. The controls are actually very intuitive, there are just two buttons, one is for starting the recording or for taking stills, and the other is power/function button. Most of the functions and settings are accessed via the touchscreen by swiping from edges. I got used to that pretty quickly, as I've said it is very intuitive, although if you want to access more advanced settings, you will have to connect the Osmo Pocket to your smartphone. 1.08-inch screen is pretty small and you will mostly be able to use it only for composing your shots and maybe for setting exposure. For the touch controls, it is still sufficiently large. Brightness and sharpness is also okay, so even though we won't be able to check the focus, it is okay for intended purposes and you can always connect it to the smartphone. So what about the image quality? As I have said, it uses 1/2.3-inch sensor, which is commonly used in smartphones and action cameras, and it is paired with lens with 80-degree field of view, which is equivalent to about 26mm on full frame camera. 26mm is one of my most favorite focal lengths and it is a good choice in my opinion. It is not ultra wide, so the image is not distorted, but at the same time it is too wide to put an emphasis on the subject, so we can say that it is quite neutral focal length suitable for all-round use. Is it good for vlogging? 24mm would be better, but it is still possible to vlog with Osmo Pocket, although you will probably have to hold it a bit further from your face. The image quality is reasonably good for this type of sensor. It can shoot 4K video up to 60 frames per second, which is great. One of the problems that I have with the video quality is that to me the footage seems to be just a bit oversharpened in certain situations. It is not critical. If you view the content shot on Osmo Pocket on smaller screen, it won't be noticeable, but on large 4K screen it may look a bit unnatural in certain scenes. Having said that, I will still say that the quality of 4K video on Osmo Pocket is generally good and more than adequate for this type of device and for intended purposes. I actually like out of the camera colors a lot, and the oversharpening can also be fixed by using flat cine-like color setting, which should be added via firmware update, and that will also improve so-called highlights shadows roll-off for those who are wondering about that. So for more serious use, I will have to revisit the image quality once the cine-like color setting is available. The lens has f2 aperture, which is pretty bright, and the low light performance is again reasonable for this type of device. We can't really expect it to provide professional grade footage in low light, but it is sufficient for capturing what's happening around you and sharing that, especially if the footage will be viewed on mobile devices. Osmo Pocket can also shoot 12 megapixel stills with very decent image quality and good sharpness. I like the colors in stills as well. These are quite saturated and pretty vibrant. RAWs are also available, so if you like to edit your photos in post, RAW files will give you a good amount of information. One more thing that I noticed is that Osmo Pocket tends to underexpose scenes with bright sky or other scenes with high dynamic range, but that can be easily fixed by tapping on the part of the screen that you want to have correctly exposed. Regarding the smoothness or the efficiency of the gimbal, first of all, it makes a huge difference in comparison with normal handheld footage, there is no doubt about that, and as I've said in the beginning of the video, it makes a big difference in the overall look. The shakiness is completely gone if you are just holding the camera still. When you are walking, it is visible that you are walking, but I am happy with this result. It looks really good in my opinion, especially if we consider how small is the gimbal. Panning is not 100% smooth, although that might be caused by the lack of skill on my side. There are 3 gimbal modes to choose from. The first one is follow mode, where the gimbal fixes the horizontal axis and it follows the movements in other axes. Then there is tilt lock mode, where the vertical axis or the tilting is also locked and it just follows the pan axis. And there is also FPV mode, where the gimbal follows all axes. I use follow mode most of the time and sometimes I also use tilt lock mode. You can easily switch from landscape to portrait mode just by rotating the device. The footage will also be saved as 9:16 video, so you won't have to rotate that in post, which is great, and I actually intend to use that a lot for Instagram stories. There are also 2 speed or responsiveness modes. There is slow follow and fast follow if you want to follow moving subjects. Unlike GoPro cameras, Osmo Pocket has to use autofocus and it generally works well, but it occasionally hangs without a reason, and I've even had a couple of misfocused stills. If you are shooting a landscape, for example, it might be a good idea to use single AF to make sure that your subject is in focus, but most of the time it works well in APS-C as well. It also has impressive tracking capabilities. It can detect faces automatically, which works surprisingly well, or you can tap on the screen to select what do you want the camera to track, or if you're using the app, you can draw a square on the subject. If something gets in the way, it can usually regain the focus very well, so overall, thumbs up for the tracking. Osmo Pocket can be connected to a smartphone using an adapter, which means that you are able to use the screen on your smartphone as a viewfinder, control the settings, and also access some advanced settings, which cannot be done without smartphone. Osmo Pocket is only held by USB-C or Lightning connector when connected to smartphone, which means that there is always some play and it is definitely not the most solid connection, but it works and nothing should happen unless you apply too much force on that connection. One thing that I don't like about the app are the on-screen gimbal controls. These are too sensitive and it is basically impossible to do smooth panning using on-screen controls. The audio quality is very decent in my opinion and definitely usable for social media. Just make sure that you don't cover any of the microphones. 3.5mm adapter will also be available later on, so it will be possible to use the Osmo Pocket with external microphone. Osmo Pocket also has some very useful special features. There is time-lapse mode, which produces the time-lapse video in camera, and there is also motion lapse, where you can set up to 4 waypoints, where the camera will move during the time-lapse, which is a great feature, and I intend to use that a lot. My most favorite special feature of Osmo Pocket is panorama mode, where it stitches together 9 stills, which works great. You just need to hold it fairly still while the pictures are being taken, but it is definitely one of my most favorite features of Osmo Pocket. Is the Osmo Pocket suitable for professional use? I think that it can be a very useful tool for documentaries. It can be used for special shots that cannot be shot with big professional camera, which can bring the viewer closer to the storyline in the similar way that GoPro does it, but because of the stabilization and narrower field of view, Osmo Pocket may be able to do that in more professional way that might be a better match for footage shot on professional camera, so I think that it can actually be a very useful professional tool. I think that the Osmo Pocket is also a good replacement for smartphone gimbals. It provides similar kind of stabilization and field of view as a smartphone, but in much smaller package, which is also easier to handle, and importantly, it is always ready and you don't have to set it up. Having said that, there are smartphones out there that can provide better video than Osmo Pocket when mounted on the gimbal, especially if you're an advanced user and you're using something like Filmic Pro, but I generally prefer handheld Osmo Pocket footage over handheld footage from any smartphone because the stabilization just makes bigger difference in my opinion. On the other hand, I don't expect the Osmo Pocket to replace GoPro or other action cameras just because it is completely different type of device. The two main differences between the Osmo Pocket and the GoPro is the field of view, which is completely different. GoPro has about 15 or 16mm full frame equivalent field of view, whereas the Osmo Pocket has 26mm field of view, even though you can get 24mm field of view if you use linear setting on GoPro. The second difference is that GoPro is made to survive reasonable amount of abuse, whereas the gimbal on Osmo Pocket is precise device, which is not meant to take any beating. So in my opinion, you should choose between the Osmo Pocket and GoPro depending what you intend to use it for, not by watching one of 623 Osmo Pocket versus Hero 7 stabilization comparisons on YouTube. To sum up, I think the DJI Osmo Pocket is a concept of a device that has a lot of potential. It is a useful device for capturing what is happening around you with added benefit of that stabilization. It can also be used as a professional tool for specific shots that can bring the audience closer to the storyline. The implementation of this concept is quite good in my opinion, although definitely not perfect. Osmo Pocket is easy to operate and unlike smartphone gimbals, it doesn't have to be set up every time. It produces very nice stills and video in good light, I like the colors, but I found the footage to be a bit over-sharpened in certain scenes, which might be visible on larger screens, so I am waiting for a firmware update which will enable Cine-like color setting, which should fix that. Of course, it won't match professional cameras, but I am generally happy with the image quality, including the stability of the gimbal. Sound is also okay in my opinion, so overall I am happy with my Osmo Pocket. I intend to use it a lot, get some accessories, and I will try to get the most out of it and I will keep you updated about that. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section and see you next time.